Hey guys, I just woke up, so I'm a little tired, but when I woke up, I did kind of see some really big news, which kind of messes up my upload schedule because I had some videos planned, but that's not important. This is a pretty big deal, to a decently large portion of the player base. So I figured I would just talk about it now, talk about my thoughts and all that stuff. And if you're in the loop on these things, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about, and that is Boreas nerfs. So, Boreas nerfs, just to put it simply, they're pretty substantial, but I do have some thoughts on them later. I don't think they're as big of a deal as they might seem. And he definitely did deserve to get nerfed, but I don't know how I feel about it. But I'll go over that at the end. For now, we're just going to go into the what's it called? We're just gonna go into the patch notes for him. Uh, Basically, he has a Frosty Endowment nerf, which is his ultimate. Before it used to trigger his auto and increase his damage by 225. That's now 175, so that's 50% worse, which is a pretty big change. And then each attack lowered attack interval or lowered the interval by 1 second. That's the same. And his ult used to last 30 seconds. Now it's 25. So it's actually quite a bit worse because that's like two or three. No, that's like one or two autos getting wasted, which really sucks, but I guess it was meant to happen. And then we get to the rage cap. The rage cap actually is getting buffed. So instead of 1200 rage, it's now 1000, which is good, but also I feel like his ult is just overall quite a bit worse. But I know that's what they were going for. But anyways, now we get to the auto, which is like one of the main parts of the kit. They nerfed his on deployment, which I think was the least problematic part about his kit at all. So now it's 20% worse, but that's whatever. The rest is basically the same, except his range is actually nerfed. So they removed one tile of range, so instead of 4.5 tiles, it's now 3.5 tiles. That is a pretty big nerf. His range is a big part of his kit. And although it was really funny, I do get why they nerfed this for sure. It was pretty massive. But they also reduced his freeze time, so now it's half the freeze time, which is his freeze time was already terrible. Like you would never really use him for that much freezing, unless you had his A1. So this kind of sucks. I'll be honest. I'll go over it later, but yeah. And then he now autos 1 second sooner, which is something. I mean, I don't think that makes a big enough difference for it to actually matter, but now quicker autos. Um, but anyways, so also during his ultimate, instead of 10 seconds, he gets it gets reduced by 9 seconds. So this with comboed with the faster auto time, it's the exact same time at his ult for him to auto. So that's good. It'll keep the timing about the same. And then Chilling Blow, which is his anti-heal ability. Basically, when they're inflicted with freeze, anti-healing 3 seconds. Now it is 4. So this is actually a buff, but it's not really a big buff. But when attacking enemies inflicted with freeze, 55 extra damage. Now it is 40% extra damage, which is pretty decent nerf. I mean, 15% less. It's a bit brutal. But I mean, it's not the craziest thing ever. Overall, he's just gonna do a lot less damage. It seems what they're trying to do with this quote unquote adjustment, aka nerf. It's blatantly a nerf, but they don't want to name it a nerf because they've never technically nerfed any hero and they're trying to dance around it. I'll go over it later, but basically they're trying to nerf his damage, which they are, and they're trying to raise his not usability, but they're trying to raise his utility. So he's gonna get longer anti heals. He's gonna get faster ults, stuff stuff like that. But what I don't get is they nerfed his freeze time half. So why would they try to make his utility better, but actively nerf his utility as well? It's a bit weird. I'm not entirely sure what the goal in this was. I think they just wanted to balance things out. But it's just like I feel so all over the place. I will say I do think this had to happen. He was too strong out the gate. Here, let me swap to the game to talk about this sort of thing. But I will say for sure he's a little too strong. He dominates arena. He dominates guild v guild in a lot of ways. Although he's not like meta guild v guild, but he's like basically meta guild v guild. I will say that he did need something. But just to go into some things I don't like about this change. Although once again, I get it. If you don't have Boreas, you're basically unable to win in a lot of areas of the game. A lot of leaderboard content, a lot. Well, no leaderboard content he's good in, but any player versus player content, he did kind of oppress everyone, which is a bit rough. But so he did need to get nerfed. But I will say some things I don't like is first of all, why would they nerf his rates if they were gonna just nerf him? I know they're calling it a rework or a readjustment, so they don't have to use the nerf word. But it's a nerf. So I don't understand why they made his rates like half of what they used to be, if not less. Because why? He's no longer going to be the best character in the game. Just straight up, I think he'll be good still. If you have godlike gear, you're still gonna crush arena and all this stuff. But like his ult time being down is a pretty big deal. If you have him A3, you're not gonna feel it. If you have him A5, you're not gonna feel anything because he's still gonna be overpowered. But um, like why would they nerf his rates? Because now, it already seemed kind of like a weird thing to do because you're separating the non-Boreas people from the Boreas people, even more by making him harder to get. But now they're nerfing him, so it's really weird. And that also brings me to a different point, which I don't really like how in gotcha games when they do this sort of thing, because like shouldn't they just playtest them at the beginning? Like, wouldn't you think that before you drop a character, you have to playtest them first? Like, what ends up happening, and what did happen, is they get released. People spend absurd amounts of money. Like, the ultimate leaderboard that week was like 500K or something like that for number one. And now they're just going in, they're basically making the character not the same character. They're nerfing them to make them worse. Like, what precedent does that send, right? Like, although he was absolutely broken, I 100% agree. If you didn't have him, your life was probably miserable. I do think you needed it. But that doesn't mean that I like the changes and the direction they're going with this. Just purely because, once again, this is a gotcha game. People spend money. So if you go in and you say, "Oh, you spent money," well, whatever. We're changing the thing you spent money for, so now it's worth less. It just kind of shows that this game really is at the hands of the devs, like the hands of the devs. I mean, so even if you spend money to get something overpowered, like what if you spend money to get tons of ancients? You pull Praetus and you're super happy, and then they go in and they nerf Praetus because he's so broken. Now, like, what did you spend your money for? You spent your money for a subpar character that you didn't know it would be like, because this sort of thing doesn't really get any notice or any fan interaction or anything, right? So I don't really like that part. Also, with the precedent this sends, with this being the first nerf they ever do, what does that really mean for the rest of the game, right? I know Boreas is broken once again, as I keep saying, because he is. He did need it. I'm just saying, what other characters are they gonna nerf? They already kind of nerf a couple characters, I will say. Namely, what are some good ones to mention? I got fixed because she was blatantly broken in Guild v Guild. She could block off the spawn, but they recently, quote unquote, fixed Valeria, which was a bug that was in the game since her release. So it's been like 6 months or more. So I'm not entirely sure why they did that. Now she's far worse than she used to be. She's a lot harder to manage, and she just feels like she kills herself every single time you use her ult, and her ult is very hard to use. I hate using her in guild boss. Sorry, purely because of her changes. She was so easy to use before, but now she's not. They've quote unquote nerfed a couple other things by basically fixing bugs. So Boreas is the first real nerf, although they're not calling it that. So what does that really mean for other things? Like Silas should get nerfed. He's broken. Silas should get changed. Hex artifact could get nerfed. He does like he's the highest guild damage, the guild boss damager now, right? Shouldn't he get nerfed? Zillitu's blatantly bugged. Why isn't she getting fixed? Like you could argue that less needs a nerf, right? Like, but the things that you also have to bring up is how do you balance supports? Because Dolores is, I think, the best character in the game. Genuinely, I think she's the best. So shouldn't she get a nerf? Shouldn't Hollow get a nerf? You can make arguments about like Laurel getting a nerf. There's so many characters in this game that are overpowered, and I know Boreas was kind of next level with that. But if you nerf Boreas, you can bring up so many cases of other characters needing to get nerfed. Like Cerberus does like 800 million in one part of the game, and he's blatantly the best option. Ardea is broken, she should get nerfed, right? Kratos is broken, he should get nerfed. I know they're rarer, but you could bring up these arguments. And it's just a bit odd that you would nerf something when there are so many other things you could technically get nerfed. Like it's just weird. But let me know your thoughts down below if you really care too much. But I'm just saying, like, something like Sulkadin's is actually busted, and, like, if we're nerfing Boreas, we should nerf, like, 10 characters, you know? Because while he is a step above the rest, he is still not the only game-breaking champion in this game. There are numerous options of them being game-breaking. Like, there are just so many good characters in this game. Like over here, you know, like all of these characters could technically get nerfed because they're all overpowered as hell, right? It's just like, come on. I don't like how they're going with this. I think they should have just nerfed him in arena, nerfed him in guild v guild. Any player versus player content, they should have nerfed him because he is terrible in any leaderboard based content. There is no Infernal Codex stage that he is good in. There is no guild boss team that he is good in. He is terrible in a lot of stages of the game, but now he's just going to be worse in all the parts of the game that doesn't really matter that he would be good in. But once again, it was sadly very overdue. But now my account's going to be fairly worse off. But if you're a non-Boreas owner, what are your thoughts on all this? Because I know Boreas owners are very upset. I think I'm kind of in the middle. But if you don't have Boreas, how do you feel about this? Do you feel happy that you're gonna actually be able to play Arena now? Just straight up, he's broken into Arena. Like, are you happy about this? Do you think it's a little lame that they nerfed him twice and all this stuff? Or like, what are your thoughts on how this might shape the game in the future? Because that's what I'm really interested about, is how will this being the first nerf ever, really, technically, apart from Lightlock, but that's unimportant. But how do you guys think this will impact the game? But I will probably end on that question. And I think I'm gonna go now. Overall, Boris is nerfed. He's a lot worse. But that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's also necessarily not a good thing. Anyways, hope you guys enjoyed, and sub to beat War Guides.